14th, at 10 o'clock in the morning. The emperor was still reading. He rose, but continued to read, and would not listen to any advice on the subject. He, however, appeared extremely tired and downcast, and his eyes were sunk, dim and livid. He ate very little the whole day. Towards evening, he took a ride on his return, from which he put a few questions to me respecting the state of his health, and then began once more to peruse the newspapers. Amongst the number of defenders of Italian independence, he observed the name of a personage of whom he only preserved an imperfect recollection. I have some idea of that man. Do you know him? Yes, sire. He is one of the Marquesas of Pavia, one of the bullies who suffered themselves to be carried off by Giorno. Who is this Giorno? What are you speaking about? One of those obscure plots which your majesty has forgotten? The partisans of Austria had taken courage. They went about the Lodero, animating the people and exciting them to revolt. The nobility, thinking the moment favorable, put the National Guard, which was at their disposal, in a state of insurrection. The Cisalpine was without troops. A man came forward to face the storm. He went to the governor, concerted his plans with him, and the chiefs of the rebellion were sent for. When they were assembled, the governor informed them that he was indignant at the excesses of some revolutionists whom he was about to punish and make an example of, and that it was for that reason he had convoked them. They expressed themselves highly pleased at his severity and were applauding his intentions and promising to show no mercy when Giorno, whose carriages had arrived, arrested the Areopagus and carried it off without the slightest attempt on the part of either conspirator or accomplice to offer any resistance. Such is blank. You have now an idea of the acts of his early years and the measure of his courage. The emperor made no reply and began to talk of Venice and of the manner in which she had ended. I understood the allusion and listened attentively. Venice, notwithstanding the insurrection of her continental possessions, still preserved immense resources and was in a state to be able to resist. Time might, besides, bring about another political combination and leave to the nobles the power which they had usurped. They knew not how to place themselves above threats and privations, and basely yielding to fear, they only sought to feign and to betray. They flattered themselves that we should be the dupes of their artifices, that they should deceive us with words, and that a revolution merely illusory would be sufficient to calm us. The Grand Council, therefore, bethought itself of abdicating its power and promising democracy. This was equal to proclaiming it, and the council perceived what they had done, but it was too late. Public opinion had marched forward. They could not retrace their steps and therefore had recourse to anarchy. The council filled the streets with bands of Sclavonians, whom it directed and excited, but the citizens fled to arms and the plot was defeated. What was now to be done? What step was to be taken? That of paralyzing the people by giving them a chief, old and without energy and incapable of rendering their resources available. Salimbene was chosen for that purpose. Unfortunately, however, this old man was still full of fire. He chose and assembled experienced men, took possession of the principal posts, and dispersed the pillagers. They returned to the charge and endeavored to take the Rinaldo by surprise. They approached, fired, rushed upon the troops by which it was defended, and put them to flight. Though abandoned by his soldiers, the officer who commanded this post did not lose courage. He flew against the assailants and engaged them single-handed. Twice his sword broke, and twice he armed himself anew at their expense. Wounded 5, killed 4, and obliged the remainder to fall back. His soldiers rallied and returned. The combatants again approached, and mixed confusion ensued, and the earth was strewed with the dead. The Senate, beaten without resource, was obliged, in order to shelter itself against the popular fury, to call for the French. Admiral Condulmer made proposals to Barangay Dillier, first offering him boats and pressing him to enter Venice alone, then imagining difficulties raising obstacles, and endeavoring, in a word, to gain time. He sometimes spoke and acted like a simple citizen, disgusted with affairs, and sometimes like an admiral, backed by all the influence of power. We had no difficulty in seeing through his maneuvers. We hastened our preparations, and Venice was taken whilst the aristocracy was still discussing its plots. 15th, the emperor was extremely dejected. The lower extremities were perfectly cold, and the pulse was low and irregular. Doctor, how much I suffer! I do not feel my bowels. It seems as if I had no abdomen left. All the pain I experience is near the spleen and the left extremity of the stomach. I feel it! The moment of my death cannot be far distant. During the whole day, he only took a few spoonfuls of soup and a few fried potatoes. 16th, saw the emperor at 10 a.m., found him in bed, plunged in a state of lethargic solemnity, which he could not overcome. To what a state am I reduced? I, who was so quick, so active, can now scarcely raise my eyelids. But I am no longer Napoleon. And he closed his eyes again towards the evening, however, yielding to my entreaties. He got up, placed himself on a sofa, and consented with reluctance to take some food. Madame Bertrand came in, and the emperor talked to her of walking out with him. We will go out early. We will enjoy the fresh air of the morning. We shall gain appetite and escape the influence of the climate. You, Hortense, and myself are the greatest invalids. We must assist each other and unite our strength to fight against the latitude and deprive it of its victims. 17th, Napoleon had passed a tolerably quiet night. He rode out in the calash for the last time, but was obliged to come back almost immediately at 12 o'clock after having taken some food. The emperor was seized with a violent pain in the head, accompanied by a sensation of extreme coldness which affected his whole frame, but chiefly between the shoulders and towards the lower extremities. He shivered, and his teeth chattered. The pulse was very weak and nervous. These fatal symptoms lasted 5 minutes. Abbe Bonavita was constantly sickly and suffering. Napoleon would not allow him to remain any longer on a rock where his zeal was appreciated, but where his services were not indispensable. He therefore gave him a pension of 3,000 francs and sent him away. I took advantage of the opportunity to write a letter to the Chevalier Colonna. The following letter: Longwood, Island of St. Helena, 17th March, 1821. My dear friend, in my letter of the 18th of July, 1820, I spoke to you of the chronic hepatitis under which His Majesty is laboring. That disease, which is endemic in the latitude where we are, appeared, however, to yield to the action of the remedies that had been administered. I had obtained some amelioration, but relapses have occurred, and since that time the patient has continually experienced sudden alternations, and all the effect of the treatment pursued has been completely destroyed. The emperor's situation is growing daily worse. The hepatic functions are no longer performed, and those of the digestive organs are entirely suspended. His Majesty is now reduced to such a state that he can only feed upon liquid substances which do not, as it were, require to be digested. And it is not even certain that these are received into the stomach, since they are rejected almost immediately after they have been taken. Such being the case, and in order to exculpate myself from all responsibility, I declare to you, to all the imperial family, and to the whole world, that the disease under which the emperor is laboring is an effect of the nature of the climate, and that the symptoms it exhibits are of the most serious kind. Art is unavailing against the continued actions of the air we breathe. And if the English government does not hasten to remove Napoleon from this devouring atmosphere, I grieve to say that His Majesty will soon be no more. The English newspapers constantly repeat that the emperor's health is good, but do not believe them. The event will prove whether those from whom they receive their intelligence are sincere or well informed. Your friend, F. Antommarchi.